Okay, I just wanted to jump back on here and show you the one batch of bread here. It's actually sponging so that you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. See how it's thick and spongy like? That's what that means when you see that in a recipe, or if you need to let your yeast sit. So hopefully you could see that. I'm going to continue mixing here and adding the flour and get it together. One thing while I'm talking about it is I'll mention when it calls for a multiple rise in your bread. Let's see here. The Alabama bread, it needs to rise and then get punched down and then rise again. The purpose of that is it gets air pockets out. When you're kneading bread, when you're kneading it, you're actually allowing the gluten to go together, the yeast to work its way in your bread, and you're continuing to work air pockets out. If you don't work those air pockets out, you will actually end up with holes in your bread. So, you'll learn as you go when you're making the breads. If your batter sponges like you just saw, you'll have nice bread. You just need to also then give it time to rise. That is really important. The rising is what gives you your fluffy consistency in the center. And you can play around. You can make 2 batches. Speaking of which, not all things can be double made. Like, you can't make 2 batches of this Alabama bread in one bowl. It won't turn out nice. Some things you can, some things you can't. Bread is typically not one of them. But when you are, I lost my train of thought now, but when you're kneading it, you do want to be careful not to allow the air pockets in there. Because your consistency won't be the same. But if you make 2 different batches and you do one as the recipe calls for and you rush the other one through, you'll see the difference in your breads. And everybody has different tastes, so maybe you'll like it that way. But the other thing is when you're working with gluten-free, it needs to be, typically the bread batter is more sticky. It will rise, but it's a different consistency. So it's not something that you can typically knead. Some of the things I make you can, or that you can work with as you would with regular breads, but typically it's more of a batter, and you just beat the fire out of it is what you do. That's what actually allows it to get the same process as if you were kneading it. So you want to really work your dough over with a wooden spoon good, and that makes a big difference. But I'm going to add my flours, get these things mixing, and I will show you the dough, and then we're going to let it rise, and I'll show you how to work it. The Kaiser rolls actually need 3 processes of rising, and it is good that you do that with the Kaiser rolls. They get really big and puffy. I mean, the guys got like 1 pound, 2 pound, I don't know what they were. They were huge. It was the roll like this, and they got burgers to go with them, just the same size. So, but like I said, they're big eaters. So anyway, I'm gonna jump off and we'll keep mixing, and I'll get back with you. Okay, a couple things I thought of that I wanted to share. If you are cooking both gluten-free and regular, using regular wheat flour at the same time and making multiple recipes, you really do need to be careful. You need to have designated spoons, measuring cups, everything for the gluten-free. When you're making breads, you need to be careful that when you're mixing your wheat flour bread, that it doesn't poof and end up in your gluten-free mixture. It's amazing how just a couple granules can make a huge difference. So if you're doing gluten-free, you want to do 100% gluten-free. Makes a huge difference. There have been times where I'll use my other counter and do strictly gluten-free over there. And it's also important to train other people involved in your child's life of the same thing. It's routine for me, but when my mother-in-law and my mom come out, it's a little tricky because they don't, you have to really think out of the box. So, it's just, you got to consider all those things. I wanted to show you this batter here. This is the Alabama bread that is going to start rising, and I wanted to share with you some tips on helping your breads rise. Like I mentioned yesterday, my home in the wintertime is typically in the mid to high 80s. Our little wood stove kicks the heat, so it's really hot in here. Hence the tank top while it's snowing outside. When I add my propane stove, it's okay. When I add the propane stove and turn that on, you have the extra heat. Now, what you want to do, some simple things to help your breads rise. I can just leave mine sit on the counter and they'll do just fine. If I don't have the heat in the house, what I will do is put a damp cloth on top of the bowl and put it in my oven where the pilot is on. It does need moisture to help it rise. If you have a microwave, you can put a cup of water in your microwave, turn it on for a minute, and you can stick your bread in there and let it rise. There's also machines made for making your bread rise, but there's easy ways to do it, and those are some of them. Just another tip for you, if you do have a microwave and you put a cup of water in and let it boil like that, a minute will bring your water to boil. Depending on your microwave, it might be 2 minutes. Once it's done, you can just take a rag and wipe your microwave clean. It basically steam cleans your microwave, so all I have to do is wipe it. I used to have a microwave. We no longer. I gave mine away. I don't want it. I don't want to use it. We're off-grid. One less thing to pull power, and I like living traditionally. I don't miss it. So those are some tips for you on raising your breads. And again, as I said in yesterday's video, I don't know everything. If you have other tips for me, I am always welcome for them. I'm open for them. I like to be an information sponge. When I'm not working and reading and writing and doing web designs, I'm researching stuff because I want to learn more. So you feel free to share. If you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. No question is stupid. That's how you learn. So please feel free to comment on the videos, on our websites, on our Facebook pages, on Twitter, whatever. Reach out to us. So I'm going to continue getting these to rise. I just saw the banana bread. My banana bread recipe is ready to go. It makes 2 loaves. I tend to be someone who adds goodies. I will sprinkle the top of my loaves with raw sugar, and I will add nuts, sometimes even cranberries, whatever. I'm always adding to my recipes. Same with the breads. I'll add all kinds of grains and stuff and nuts and things to my recipes. So don't be afraid to experiment. Now, when you're working with gluten-free, you want to be a little more careful because it's not as easy to add things to without getting different results. And the ingredients are more pricey. So, and if you're going to eat it, if it flops, then go for it, because we'll eat it if it flops. We're not going to waste food. But if it doesn't rise all the way or something, you learn as you go, and that's, of course, how you're going to learn, too. Just like I'm making this oat flour bread today. I want to see how it's going to rise and what kind of things I can put in it. So I will jump back a little later and show you how the bread has risen. In the meantime, I'm going to get the banana bread in the oven, and I'm going to go do some writing. So I'll catch up with you in a little bit.